Hey there, friends. Are you considering a PCS move to Wright Patterson Air Force Base? Whether you have orders or looking to get orders to come here, there are some pros and cons you need to consider when thinking about moving to Wright Pat. In this video, I'm going to outline some pros and also some cons about not only Wright Pat itself, but the Dayton area in general, and some general thoughts I have about this region after living here for about 25 years or so. So one of the big pros, which is huge right now, I record this in April of 2022, where we have a major affordability crisis on our hands, is the Dayton area is a very, very affordable place to live. And that's definitely something to consider. Yeah, you are getting some housing allowance, but certainly overall being able to find a place to live with that housing allowance is certainly something you have to consider. And so we have plenty of places to live here. Our housing is affordable. And we actually do have some inventory in stock for if you want to purchase a home when you live here. Now, that's not to say that it's going to be, you're going to buy the first house you see and you're immediately approved to get a house. There certainly is competition. And, even here in the Dayton area, houses are going in 1 to 2 days, just like everywhere else, but you're not going to see this crazy bidding war with 100 offers per house. And just, I hear some of these horror stories in other cities, and that stuff just doesn't happen here, at least not yet, at least. Obviously it could in the future, but as of right now, when I record this video in April 2022, we have not seen that in this market at the moment. So that's very, very good news. The other good news is generally sellers are accepting the VA loan. Now, of course, there's always the exception. There's always the dumb realtor that says something crazy that veers things off track. But in general, if you have a good loan officer, whether it's me or someone else has experience with VA and a strong offer, and a strong commitment letter for that loan, VA can get accepted here for sure. I'm hearing horror stories in other cities where that's not the case. So that's definitely something to not take lightly, because in certain cities, the VA offer is just being thrown in the bottom of the pile, and it's just ridiculous. But luckily in this area, we're very, very lucky in that regard. The other thing you'll find about this area, it's very, very veteran friendly. You'll notice that immediately when you walk into our Dayton International Airport. You'll see American flags everywhere. You'll see different military type things when you walk into the airport. When you go baggage claim, there's a huge welcome veterans sign, and there's some banner. I don't remember what it's advertising, but it's very obvious that in the Dayton community, we support our veterans. And so you'll feel very welcomed here. What you also find is we have a very strong retired veteran community. A lot of people come here to come to Wright Pat, discover that it's a great place to live, and they end up staying here longer term. And so if that's something that you're interested in, maybe making this your last stop, it's certainly something to consider, especially, like I said, because the cost of living is so reasonable compared to other cities, and we have that strong veteran community. Definitely something to consider as well. And we also find our government is very supportive of Wright Pat. It is the largest employer in the Dayton region. I believe it's either the largest or one of the largest employers in our state, in the state as well. Our local representatives are on it. Whenever there's a cut proposed to Wright Pat, they don't mess around. It's so interesting. I'll tell you a quick story about this. A year or two ago, someone was trying to run against our representative, Mike Turner. And part of her platform was, he talks too much about Wright Pat, talk about other stuff, blah, blah, blah. And it was really interesting because as soon as she said that, the polling for this lady went to the toilet, and she got creamed in the actual election itself. So yeah, our community doesn't mess around with Wright Pat. It's definitely a big part of who we are as a region, and you'll definitely feel supported here. And we do have deep aviation history as well. We have the Air Force Museum, the National Museum of the United States Air Force is here. And I mean, my gosh, the base is named for the freaking Wright brothers, for Christ's sake. So yeah, I mean, we have a Wright brothers airplane. We have different museums around the area, all kind of different sites and things. So if you're into aviation history, you're going to love this area. It is a large base. It's about 30,000 employees at the moment. I don't really know. And I know that it's been growing the past few years. I don't know what their projections are for the future. You probably know more about that than I do, but it's definitely a base that always has been growing And usually when there's reduction in force in other bases, they end up actually coming to Wright Patt. We actually end up gaining instead of losing one of those reductions. So you'll have a very safe, secure job here, which is good. The other thing to know is there's good opportunity after service. And so if you decide you want to be a contractor after you serve, that's a very common thing to have happen. There are a lot of contracting companies just located right off the base. And so if that's something you want to go into later, definitely easy to get. And you can kind of do that double dip thing where you're getting military retirement pay plus some contractor money and end up making some really good money. That's very common to see that around here. Some other things to understand about the Dayton region overall, there's actually a lot to do here, believe it or not. People don't realize how much there actually is to do here. And part of that is because of our location. We're located about 45 minutes to an hour north of Cincinnati. Columbus is an hour to hour and a half, depending on where in Dayton you're coming from, where in Columbus you're coming from. So that creates a lot of opportunity. And that, like from my house to the far south side of Cincinnati, like Cincinnati Airport, which is over in Kentucky, that's only an hour drive. I mean, I can get to the northern suburbs of Cincinnati only 30 minutes. Dayton and Cincinnati are actually so close that nobody really knows. I've been here 25 plus years and nobody's really told me where Dayton ends and Cincinnati begins. I mean, our suburbs are kind of coming together, literally to the point where I think the census is talking about making us one super region for the purpose of the census, whatever the heck that means. So not only do you have things in Dayton you can go to, things in Cincinnati you can go to, once you add those together, it's a huge array of opportunities of things you can do. I pretty much have access from my house within an hour of anybody in any major city, Dallas, Chicago, New York, LA, wherever. 95% plus percent of the things that are in major cities that we have here, which is really cool. And you have that without having nearly the traffic issues they have, certainly none of the homeless issues they have, certainly none of the issues with affordability they have. So a lot of the pluses without the minuses is what I say on that. The other real good thing about that, because of locations, you actually have access to 3 job markets, not just the Dayton market. So the Dayton market Dayton is right next to the base. And so if you have a spouse, a civilian needs a job, you can pretty much get anywhere in Dayton from the Air Force Base in 30 minutes or less. Most parts of the Dayton metro region, or what's considered Dayton, are within 20 minutes of the base. So that's really, really good. But in addition to that, you could consider also the Cincinnati or Columbus market. Like I mentioned a minute ago, Cincinnati is very, very close to us. So if you live on the south side of the Dayton area, maybe Springboro or one of those areas down there, which is about 25 minutes from the base, you could easily have your spouse drive to the Cincinnati area. You could be downtown Cincinnati in 40 minutes from there. I think that's even in traffic. I don't even think it's even that long to downtown Cincinnati. And the Cincinnati suburbs like Mason or Westchester, I mean, you're talking 20, 25 minutes, easily commutable from Springboro. On the other side, if you want to go towards Columbus, you can go out I-70, which is directly east of the base, and you could get something out that's commutable to Columbus very easily. Now, keep in mind, if you do want to commute to Columbus, those areas in between Fairborn, which is where the base is, and Columbus, there's not much of anything. It's out in the middle of nowhere. So you have to consider that there's not going to be a lot of shopping, or it's pretty rural out there. So you have to consider that. But the base itself, there is a shopping mall, lots of restaurants and things near the base itself. So if you end up living kind of that in between Fairborn and Columbus area, you could always do your shopping right after work right there at the Fairfield Commons Mall, which is literally right next door to the base. So something to keep in mind as well. We also don't have as much traffic issues as other areas. We have some traffic issues, but you won't see the traffic jams that I've seen in other cities, which is really good for us as well. We're also on an easy road trip to other major cities. Lexington, Kentucky is not very far. Louisville's not very far. Indianapolis is only a couple hours. Detroit is 3.5 hours from here. So you have options of places to go if you'd like road tripping to something real quick and easy over a weekend in a Midwest city. You can get to there pretty easily. So now I want to go into some cons of living here. I don't want to make it just pros and don't want to make it just all fun and roses, and because there are some cons of living here. First of all, there are quite a bit of civilians on base, and I have seen some posts on Reddit about that. So that is something to consider if that's an issue for you. The base has about 30,000 employees right now. I believe it's about 8,000 are active duty Air Force, and the rest are civilians. So that is something to consider. If that could be a con for you, I'm not sure. But I put that as a con because there were some people on Reddit that had mentioned that and they didn't like that. So something to think about. Also, it's not the prettiest city in the world. You know, people are not going to be like, "Wow, you're moving to Dayton, Ohio. Oh my gosh, that's amazing." You know, and unfortunately, the media has not made it any easier because there are certainly media reports that make show the worst of our area. There are some areas that definitely could use some revitalization. I think our riverfront, especially, we get the Great Miami River right to the middle of town. There are a couple parts of the river that are pretty nice. We have the River Skate Park, which is right next to the river. But there are a lot of areas of the river that are very underutilized. Some they're just plain dirty. And there's a lot of manufacturing, some still active, some not so active anymore. And so you see a lot of factories around here and just a lot of industrial type stuff around here. And so the landscape is not always pretty. You're not going to see a lot of palm trees or any fancy stuff like that. But can't have everything, right? And Florida is only a 2-hour flight away. Think about that too. And so again, it's not so trendy. We have bad press. The other thing to consider is the weather. We do have all 4 seasons here, and sometimes in a single day. But what you'll find is our weather is not as crazy as in Cleveland. You're not going to get 2 feet of snow in a single day like you'll see up in Cleveland. We'll get 1 to 2 decent snowfalls a year. I get 6 or 7 inches every so often, and some years we don't get that. So something to think about as well. We're also a city with a lot of different suburbs, and this is part of the misconception about Dayton itself. Is that every single video I've ever seen talks about Dayton, talks about the core city of Dayton. But you have to consider that Dayton actually has a lot of suburbs. You got Fairborn, you got Beaver Creek, you got Centerville, you got Springboro, you got all these different cities around here. And they are actually much wealthier than the city of Dayton. We've had a lot of suburban flight here the past 40 or so years. And so the core of Dayton itself, unfortunately, has the kind of a little bit of more of a poverty issue going on. And so unfortunately, that's skewed our stats. And so we'll get these. I was just watching a video yesterday talking about, how bad Dayton is and poverty rates and blah, blah, blah. But they're talking about the city of Dayton itself. You consider the entire region, it's actually not nearly as bad as they say. So something to think about there. You might be defending the region, at least I have been lately, just defending what we got here, because unfortunately the press is not cool and trendy and whatnot. So, but that is our region. I hope you decide to move here, whatever you decide to do in your Air Force journey. As always, if you have any questions about the region or VA loans itself, or want to connect to a realtor or anything else related to either the Dayton area or VA loans related, feel free to reach out to me. My number is 937-572-3713. You can also reach us at scarpero.com. Later.